Hello everyone and welcome to another reaction video. We are back here again with a Die Rise World Record History, and it's by none other than Wonderful. He actually gave me permission to react to this video, so thank you for that. And I'm already subscribed. You guys should definitely go and subscribe to him. I'm liking the video. Go check him out. Really awesome dude. He's done so many videos. I think I reacted to his last Buried record history. I loved it. And so now I actually want to react to the Die Rise, one of my favorite maps in Black Ops 2. Surprising, yes, it is my favorite map. A lot of people hate it, but you know what? I love it. I like it. And without further ado, because it is an almost an hour long, let's get right into the reaction, shall we?
Black Ops 2 Die Rise. If you
Yep.
played any zombies back in the game's heyday, you probably remember falling off this map once or twice, or a lot. Die Rise
A
has
lot.
always had a strange place in the community, being seen as both one of the most hated and most loved maps, and both one of the easiest and hardest maps as well. But one thing is for sure, Die Rise separated the good players from the legends, and put zombie strategists to the ultimate test, the progression of its records playing out in ways no one thought were possible. Let me explain the 11-year history of one of Black Ops 2's most punishing, but most strangely successful maps.
World record history. Let's freaking go. Die Rise. The Die Rise remaster model for Black Ops 3 is going to come out soon too. Perfect time.
Die Rise was Treyarch's second experimental map, the first being Transit. In the beginning of Black Ops 2, Treyarch decided to spice up their map layouts. Die Rise was the result of them saying, what if, instead of building a map across, we built up? The map takes place above the 80th floors of skyscrapers in post-apocalyptic downtown Shanghai, China. It's laid out vertically, and the only way to get from floor to floor is by elevator, or falling. Was this
Yeah,
experiment a good
falling.
idea? Well, there's a reason Treyarch never made another map like this. Die Rise was not received very well due to its labyrinthian layout, difficulty navigating to teammates, glitchiness, and tendency for players to die more often to gravity than the zombies. However,
Wow.
one thing that balanced the bad parts of the map out was its wonder weapon. When you think of a great wonder weapon, you probably think of the Thunder Gun or
Yeah.
Wave Gun. Those wonder weapons have lots of ammo and can kill an entire horde of zombies in one shot at any round, saving your life with a single trigger pull. I mean, what could possibly be better than that? Well, how
Yeah.
about a wonder weapon that can not only kill every zombie in front of you in one shot, but every single zombie in the entire round with one bullet? When Die Rise released on January 29th, 2013,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
that
Hold
was
on.
how
Before that.
powerful its
Yeah.
wonder weapon, the
I'll let this play
Sliquifier,
out.
was. Each shot fired a burst of purple acid that, when hitting one zombie, chained to other nearby zombies almost like the Wonder Waff from Black Ops 1. Unlike the Wonder Waff though, the chain stayed alive and stayed with a particular zombie for much longer. As long as you were in a place where the spawns were fast enough, you could permachain zombies through the entire round. Also, when you shot it, it would leave a slippery puddle on the ground, delaying the zombies chasing you and creating even more opportunity to keep the chain alive. Not only that, but the Sliquifier came with 50 shots and could easily be crafted on round 1 by finding 4 parts around the same general area. That wasn't the only wild ingredient that Die Rise threw into the mix.
Okay, yeah. When this map came out, yes, all of that was amazing. The thing is, though, I was a very new zombies player, so I did not take any advantage of that. I knew about it, I just didn't know how to implement it. I was like, okay, how do I how do I make that possible? I never found out a way to make that possible. And then once I got better at zombies, they had patched it, so I didn't take any advantage of that,
The map also
which sucks.
introduced a new perk called Who's Who. With it, when a player downed, they would respawn as a copy of themselves with no perks and only a pistol. Then they would have 45 seconds to revive themselves. If they succeeded, they'd keep all their perks except Who's Who. If they couldn't revive themselves but stayed alive, and they had Quick Revive, they'd instantly revive after those 45 seconds with a Quick Revive use. If they didn't have Quick Revive, they'd simply remain that copy of themselves with no perks or weapons. And if they died, well, they died.
I didn't know.
Lastly, Die Rise was also the only map on Black Ops 2 with special rounds. In this case, jumping jacks that would give the player a max ammo at the end of their round, and a free perk drop if you completed the round without firing a single missed bullet. Which not only meant Who's Who could be dropped into your lap, but spelled even more ammo for the Sliquifier. As you can probably imagine, players slip and slided their way straight to world records less than 24 hours after the map's release. On January 30th, a Zombies player creatively named the Zombie Playa 101 uploaded a round 85 on Die Rise. His strategy was running back and forth in the sushi bar area, a U-shaped room with spawns on the ends. This room was perfect for keeping the Sliquifier chain alive and moving around with plenty of space. Zombie Playa noted in the description that it took barely any time compared to other maps, giving a perfect prediction of how fast the map would progress. First, however, he'd have to be more prepared for Who's Who crisis mode situations like this. 4 days later, Zombie Playa beat his own record and made it to round 94, improving massively at the sushi bar strategy, as he went from having 7 downs by the end of his previous game to playing flawlessly to 94. However, on 94, he used an insta-kill for way too long and trapped himself in the corner when the zombies went back to having millions of health. This game he did not use Who's Who, although he still couldn't recover. But this added to the conversation about whether or not Who's Who gave you an advantage. More opportunities for downing and recovering, but also giving the player more opportunities to get double slapped and die. Some players viewed it as a bigger risk than it was worth.
So that is why a Quick Revive is actually better than Who's Who. Because, I mean, Who's Who is just so random, man. You can just get spawned anywhere. And as you saw here, you can just get spawned, you know, in the middle of a few zombies and just instantly go down.
The same day, this record would be beaten by a name that, if you've ever watched a Call of Duty Zombies high round video before, you probably know. IL Steve IL. Steve got to round 99 in the sushi bar before choking the world's first 100 on Die Rise. But he showcased just how powerful the strategy was.
Choked it at 99.
After the Sliquifier chain had been started, Steve used the mobility of the Mustang and Sally to run continuous cutbacks, only having to concentrate on staying one step ahead of the zombies. All 3 of his downs were at 95 plus from the horde pushing him too far back into the room against the wall. Even though he died in Who's Who this game, Steve maintained that the perk was still useful, as unlike Quick Revive, you could rebuy it infinite times, meaning that this was the first zombies map which you could technically take infinite
why didn't he
downs
revive
on
himself?
in solo. This death didn't set Steve back much, because 2 days later he catapulted past his own record to 122, and did secure the first 100 on Die Rise.
Nice.
Or did he? Well, hang on to something, because we're barely a week into the world record history, and the controversy's already starting. 3 days earlier, on February 2nd, another household high round zombies name had uploaded a video on an alternate strategy that exploded. This player was the Relaxing End, and he had already gotten a 137, but he found a way to do it without even moving. A critical exploit had been discovered in the broken elevator shaft area of the map. If players stood on the ledge by the Galvanuckles wall-by, the zombies would only spawn from one spot. Their spawn was also down a hill from the ledge, so by slicking the incline, the player could ensure that the zombies would never reach them, and the spawn was so close that every single round could easily be completed in just a few chains. It looked awfully close to the kind of pile-up glitches players had seen from cheaters jumping out of the map on Black Ops 1, but technically you could call it legit since it was more spawn abuse than anything. Relaxing really just wanted to spotlight the strategy.
What would you call that? Like, I guess strategy? This is the most iconic strategy in Die Rise. I think it was used, like, always. It was always used. And until I think they found another one,
and see what players thought of it. So he didn't claim the legitimate first 100 or world record. But this strategy basically split the leaderboards, causing
Yeah.
Steve and subsequent
Easy
world
and
record
hard
holders to have to mention that their game was the world record without the Galvanicles spawn abuse strategy. Steve might have actually been able to beat Relaxing's game in the sushi bar, but something stopped him dead in his tracks. Can you guess what it was? Well, it wouldn't be a Black Ops.
Wait, so there was an easy and a hard strat? So kind of like now where they have like Gubblegums and no Gubblegums runs, I'm guessing? It's kind of weird considering it's the same map though. Like you are abusing I guess a spawn manipulation. It's not a glitch. It's you just not even really abusing. It's just the fact that they just spawn there and you don't move. I don't know. I don't know if I would agree with that. The fact that you're not using it or the fact that you are using it. It's really I don't know. I don't know if I have the right to say whether it's okay or not. Actually, I'm just gonna stop talking because I for me from my own opinion is that I would actually use the strategy, but I guess other people would just see it otherwise. Not no skill basically. It would just take no skill. You just standing there shooting one bullet every round. So I guess I can see the somewhat quote unquote abuse on that, the easy strat.
Ups to world record history video if we didn't start seeing games end to errors. Yep, Steve's game ended on 122 to a script error, which was dismaying to the community as it was quickly becoming the fastest zombies map of all time, but also the shortest lived. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, a certain grinder you may remember from my last world record history was playing full days of Die Rise. The Space Marine 360 had a plan to push the Galvanicles strategy as far as it would go. On February 9th, he beat Relaxing by 12 rounds, reaching 149. Then, when his Sliquifire ran out of ammo and he went to trade it out into the mystery box for a new one, he had to stall while waiting for the elevator with a full horde, and he did not stall long enough. Now, there's one more case for Who's Who that I didn't mention at the beginning. If you down somewhere where you would never be able to revive yourself, such as falling off the map or downing on a moving elevator, Who's Who will skip its 45-second timer altogether and just respawn you with nothing. It's better than dying, but not by much. This is what happened to Space, and he wandered around the map trying to recover until he got trapped again. He noted that this game only took him 9 hours, which was about how long it took Steve to get to 100. In terms of zombie count, 100 is only about a third of the way to 150, meaning Space Marine was 3 times as fast in the Galvanicles strategy compared to the sushi bar. The next day, Space beat this record by getting 152, and then dying in basically the same way while trading. Die Rise only has 3 box locations, but 2 of them are in extremely tight areas, and are very difficult to hit with a full horde of zombies chasing you, since a consistent strategy for trading had not yet been developed. But the weird thing was that Space, along with everyone else on the in-game leaderboards doing this strat, weren't getting errors, while the players running in the sushi bar and playing the technically legit way were getting errors. Case in point, on February 12th, another huge name at
the error thing, is it because of the time? Like how long it takes for you? Like back in Buried, when they found out, when they figured out an error as well for Buried, and they figured out that you have to get through rounds as quickly as you can before a set amount of time errors you. I think would that be the same thing here happening? Maybe, considering the sushi bar takes longer to do than the Galvanical strat. Also, another thing I had completely forgotten that you actually would have to switch out your Sliquifire, considering the ammo capacity on it. And I think I don't know if they give you back. I don't know if they give you drops also. I don't know if that
at the time joined the Die Rise parade. King Jack Offsuit, a Black Ops 1 player famous for his round 200 attempts and former holder of the Transit world record, achieved round 122 on Die Rise before his Xbox froze, tying Steve's sushi bar world record. Even though his game had ended abruptly, it was clear that he and many other high rounders were having a blast on Die Rise, despite its environmental confusion and pitfalls.
And thanks to the Sliquifire, The days of zombie training
kind of want to
are
see when they
dead.
get to the PC.
Now it's all about zombie streaking. No, I'm not talking about running around naked. I'm talking about killing a couple hundred zombies with just one shot of this liquefier. Getting a good streak going where you kill 200, 300 zombies with just one shot of this liquefier, it's just flat out satisfying. And it's because you're killing zombies just constantly that these rounds really seem to fly by.
The map was fast, efficient, and chaotic, a welcome difference from the monotony of Transit or the lengthy games of Black Ops 1. And the Sliquifier was one of the most fun wonder weapons to use ever.
It was.
Who didn't love turning zombies into goop for hours and hours on end?
No, when we're
Unfortunately,
gonna get to the point
though,
where,
players back on the
they patch it.
Galvanical strategy were beginning to find the limits of the wonder weapon. The next day saw Space Marine make it to 162, only to encounter an entirely new problem:
162.
invisible zombies. On Black Ops 2, invisible zombies can occur when you attempt to kill a zombie with a weapon or trap that's supposed to be an automatic kill, but the zombie actually has too much health to fully die from it. Not only are invisibles sneaky and unexpected, you can't even shoot or hurt them because they have no body. So this stopped Space's run in its tracks, along with several other players who began hitting round 162 and having the same problem. Space claimed to have a plan for dealing with invisible zombies in his next game, but in a few days it wouldn't matter, because Die
trample
Rise
scene,
was
maybe?
about to experience its own apocalypse. On February 19th,
Patch, yep, here
Treyarch
we go.
themselves brought down the hammer, putting out quite possibly the biggest post-release nerf ever in Zombies history. First, the Galvanucles ledge strategy was patched, as zombies could now drop down from the ledges above you, instead of being limited to the singular spawn in the
yep.
wall. But to everyone's disappointment, the Sliquifier
This is where
took
the
a
next
massive
strategy comes
hit
in.
as well.
Treyarch has decided to nerf the Sliquifier, and it's not in a good way, it's in a bad way. I'm very pissed off about this because it was the community's fault for doing the exploit, for fucking the leaderboards over, for posting lots and lots of videos about it, and now, because of this, the legit players have to suffer when going for high rounds on Die Rise, because the latest nerf that has actually been done to the Sliquifier made it so that it creates crawlers beyond round 100.
That's right, Treyarch let players have their fun
crawlers,
until
huh?
100, but after 100 they had hard-coded in an incredibly steep damage drop-off. At this point, the Slick would begin making crawlers instead of actually killing all the zombies, forcing players to put 5 to 10 shots into a horde to start a chain, and having to refresh the chain way more often since crawlers are considerably slower than normal zombies.
Oh, but that's after
But that
100,
wasn't
okay.
all. Now, the chain would only continue while you were holding the Sliquifier out, so if you switched to a speed weapon to move faster, the Slick would just stop killing. Also, instead of making just one
okay,
puddle on the
okay.
ground from the first chain shot, every few zombies that died would drop a new puddle, so zombies slid in and out of the horde much more often, as it was way harder to control the slippery surfaces. Needless to say, players were pissed at this update, which had turned the Sliquifier from basically the most powerful zombies weapon of all time into something that felt like it was actually made in China. Some blamed those who chose to use the exploit for
Yeah.
ruining the fun, but it was clear from aspects of the nerf, like having to hold the Sliquifier out while the chain was running, that
Okay. Treyarch should not have done that, in my opinion. I get it though, the whole balance and stuff like that, but that was the only fun thing about Die Rise was the Sliquifier. The only thing. The map, not that great, even though I liked it. I liked it because of the Sliquifier, the wonder weapon. The verticality, and not that much. The fact that you had to go all the way around the map, wait on elevators to get back your perks once you go down, it sucked. But this liquefier was the only thing keeping us alive. And I decided to nerf it like that badly. I mean, they should have at least just made it to where you had to keep it out, you know, like Wonderful mentioned, you know, just keep it out and let the chain continue. Don't switch to another speed weapon. That would have been that was a good nerf, I guess, in a way. But to make it to where 10 shots to continue the chain, I didn't know that. A lot of these nerfs, I didn't know. I just knew that they nerfed it to where it would not continue the chain altogether. Like, damn. Like, I didn't, like I said, I was a brand new zombies player, more like a brand new Call of Duty player back then. So I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know that they made patches. I didn't know that they made community posts back then. I didn't know where to get most of this information besides YouTube. So a lot of this stuff I didn't know. So it is all new to me.
That
All
Treyarch had
new.
intentionally nerfed the sushi bar strategy too. The general reaction to the Galvanuckles ledge nerf was relief, but at the same time, Steve and King Jack's joint world record of 122 could no longer be beaten. Players started experimenting with a range of different strategies, from camping on the escalator outside spawn to running in a different room dubbed Hole in the Ground, which had some considerable inclines, but
Oh, actually, I'll say this. I did play on the Buddha room on that little ledge where you would go with this little stick right in the middle, like not in the middle, more like on the right, left corner, depending on where you're looking at. But when you're entering the Buddha room, there's this little stick that goes up towards where you came from, and I would just climb up there and shoot the Suko Fire down. I think I started doing that after the patch, so that was a good strategy for a while that I was doing. But obviously I wasn't that good, so it didn't really last that long. I only lasted like 2 rounds, and then they would just overpower me.
nothing really
But
stuck.
yeah, I
and
was playing
players
mostly in the
struggled
Buddha room.
immensely to get any rounds past 100. A seasoned strategist with a fitting name, Horde Kill Repeat, tried to figure out how the community could even continue the record progression. He tested killing full hordes at Hole in the Ground, but it wasn't very efficient. He even tried shooting the zombies and then jumping into a different building to see if they'd bleed out, but that didn't work either. He then
I see, I
decided
see.
to use Die Rise's new buildable trap, the Trample Steam, which was essentially a launch pad that killed zombies when they ran over it,
Yeah,
or
it's
flung the
infinite damage.
player when the player ran over it. He tried killing full hordes with the Trample Steam right next to the workbench where you built it, which he noted was fun, but he didn't think it was sustainable, as he died about 20 minutes into doing this. Going into March
Wow.
of 2013, the general feeling
Scotty!
of players was one of frustration and demotivation. Being set back so far on such a fun strategy felt more like punishment from Treyarch for glitchers
Yeah,
and
they
spawn
just
abusers,
made it so
rather
much
than
harder.
fair balancing. Getting to round 100 was still a breeze, but after that, players only had 2 options. Spam the Sliquifire into the
Oh, he almost
Horde,
fell.
have to trade it several times per round and die like Space Marine, or try to use the Trample Steam to kill the zombies and die like Horde Kill Repeat. You have to remember that there were no strategy testers in 2013 like there are today, so if you wanted to test a strategy on round 100, you had to actually play to round 100. 5 to 6 hours for a test game just to try to fight through rounds we'd already seen? A lot of players weren't up for it. Now, Die Rise wasn't just the map you fell off of, it was the map that fell off. Still, that
Oh my
didn't
God.
stop everyone from playing. At the end
That
of the
shit's
month,
so
another
good.
Die Rise wasn't just the map you fell off of,
Yeah.
it was the map that fell off.
It did, it
Still,
did.
that
The
didn't
Sliquifire
stop
just made it
everyone
so
from
much
playing.
better.
At the end of the month, another legendary but lesser known player,
Oh my
Jam
What a
1995-1961, beat Horde Kill Repeats 102 and made it to 103. Instead of
Oh.
choosing one of the 2 strategies floating around,
Oh, these are
Jam
after
combined
patches,
them. For the
okay.
first 100 rounds he played in Sushi Bar, but when the Sliquifire started making crawlers, he brought a Trample Steam down to Hole in the Ground and killed the zombies in a bottleneck. He saved just enough of the buildable's life to fling him back to the dragon rooftop before letting the zombies destroy it. He could then walk up to the next floor, grab another trample, and repeat. This was much safer than Horde Kill Repeat's strategy. On 102,
Damn, oh my God, just knowing when to stop the flinger from killing zombies to have enough for you to fling. That's insane. I don't even know when to stop when to stop it. He just continuously goes.
Jam got lucky enough
Oh
with a
my
max
God.
ammo to complete the entire round in Sushi Bar with the Slick. But on 103 he had to trade, and it didn't go well. Dying on
that's
the
fun.
elevator
Yeah.
respawned him on the previous floor, and he got swarmed almost instantly. Jam's strategy was safe enough to nudge him through the first of the now impossible Die Rise 100 plus rounds, but it was painstakingly slow, taking several minutes to kill barely more than a single horde of zombies.
They're gonna get to
However,
100
it would
plus.
remain the record for a while, more than 2 months. Then, Space Marine would return to really make his mark on the map. this
Oh,
time
he's
far
back.
removed from the controversial Galvaknuckles strategy he had been grinding before. Space would switch up his strategy from jams to one that was definitely more dangerous, but more efficient, actually using the trample steam on the same floor that Horde Kill Repeat had been, but in a different spot. He placed the trample steam right in front of the B-23R wall buy, in an area where a lot of zombies drop down to when spawning, and he would kill the Horde bit by bit and catch a few of the respawners here also. The problem was that this room had spawns and zombies jumping in from nearly all sides, and no panic room to work with. So one bad spawn could spell an instant down for Space. Another problem was Black Ops 2's addition of walkers in high rounds. This is an often misunderstood mechanic even today. So let me explain how it works. Past round 15, if there are less than 5 walkers on the map during the round, the game will keep trying to spawn in more until there are 5. On paper, this kind of seems like a good thing, because then you have less zombies running at you. But for one thing, it makes the game much slower, because these walkers take forever to meander over to where the player is killing all the zombies, in this case, the trample steam, and they are excessively good at getting in the way of a clean horde up. So they make the game a lot riskier if you have no panic weapon. But Space cut down on some of this time spent risking his life by using a full Sliquifier at the beginning of every round after 100, and then trading the gun at the end of the round when he only had a handful of zombies and it was safe. This meant that he only had to play Trample Steam for a little while each round. This strategy may have gone far, but he ended up disconnecting while paused overnight on the beginning of 103, jointing Jam's record. Still, it seemed like progress was finally starting to be made on post-patch
very
Die
slow
Rise.
progress, but
Mob
progress.
of the Dead and Buried were hogging all of the attention now, and with Origins released soon after, Jam and Space's 103 joint world record remained uncontested until almost the end of the year. Then, as if not enough famous god-tier players had played it, the record was beaten by yet another one. Can you guess who? Come on, who's the one OG player I haven't mentioned yet? On November 21st, Frenzy played around
Frenzy.
104 on Die Rise. He played 1 to 100 in the sushi bar,
I'm
got
gonna
jumping jacks on
I'm gonna have to,
101, and used a full Sliquifier at the beginning of 102.
I'm gonna have to
Then
start,
he put his
learning
own Trample
these,
Steam
these
strategy
names.
into action,
Scotty,
which was
Frenzy.
slightly different than Space's. Instead of killing the Horde
Everyone.
and respawners bit by bit, Frenzy killed full hordes with the Trample Steam, and he also kept the couch right next to the workbench closed to make the zombies come in from one less direction. However, this was still very much a work-in-progress strategy, and getting the trample steam placement right and getting the timing right of waiting for it to set was a challenge that caused most of Frenzy's downs and eventually his death in this game. For 102, 103, and 104, Frenzy mirrored Space in using a full Sliquifier at the beginning of the round, then trading it out with one zombie at the end of the round to use a full one again for the next. This made his game much faster, only about 9 hours in total, with a third of that time being spent on rounds 100 to 104. But on 104, a bad Who's Who spawn caused Frenzy to panic and open the closed couch, which screwed up his rhythm and caused him to die about 10 minutes later. This was still a victory for Frenzy, as he hadn't actually played the map much in general, and taking the record turned out to be easier than he had thought. But this game wouldn't gain much traction because it was actually beaten just 2 days later. Well, I say beaten, but really, it was destroyed. Space Marine was back, and this time he meant business. With his same slow and steady strategy from his 103, he achieved around a 108. However, no
108.
footage still exists of this game,
I was
so I'm
gonna
going
say
to talk about the
117.
next game he played a few weeks later, when he skyrocketed all the way to 117.
Yeah, there we go.
And
There we
his
go.
game didn't even end to a death. It ended to a freeze after 18 and a half hours of gameplay. As the longest Die Rise game so far, the 117 was huge for consistency of survival on the map. In every other attempt, players were struggling to even live far past 100, but Space was nothing if not consistent. Even though he only killed about one horde per trample steam before breaking it and getting a new one to keep the horde under control, his strategy worked to see rounds on Die Rise no one had seen since the patch. In fact, space got so high that the sliquifier stopped working altogether. By 116, he could no longer get a chain started, even when spamming the entire slick into the horde. So the trample steam time stretched longer and longer,
Okay,
but
so
space was
now
used
there's
to
no
it.
way
In
to
fact,
use
he was the
the
only one who
sliquifier.
was, because this game would remain the record for 2.5 years.
No
For all of
fucking
2014
way.
and 2015, Die Rise was in a weird place in the grand scheme of zombies maps. The 100 was one of the easiest and fastest in zombies. Running in Sushi Bar for this phase of the game was still popular, but players had also discovered a new strategy in
Yep.
the elevator shaft on
That's
the
the one-
level
that's the
below
current
the
one.
Galvanuckles, an incredibly fast 2-spawn where the zombies didn't drop down. But after 100, Die Rise became one of the hardest maps in all of zombies. Never before had a map had such a hard stop when it came to strategy economy. So many people got 100, or 101 if they got lucky enough to have 100 as a jumping jack round, and then died or quit that Zombie Records, the high round record site created for fans by fans, had to add separate pages listing everyone who had a 100 or 101. That second phase of the game was so brutal that no one was up to the challenge. Well, almost no one. The first contender was a player named Umesco, who achieved a 116 in March of 2015, dying on one of the last few hordes of the round right before he would have tied the record. He used
Dang.
Space Marine's strategy, but he
I would've
also
been
played this
devastated if
game
that
as
was
a
me,
no
but also I
power
would've been
challenge,
so happy
meaning
to
he never
beat that
turned the
far.
power switch on. This alone would have made it one of the most impressive world records on this timeline so far. But even though he was so close he could probably hear Space Marine's footsteps on the floor above, Umesco's game was largely overlooked. For one
Oh, no.
thing, he had choked, and for another, he had a habit of not uploading full gameplay
That
of
one
his
zombie.
games, so a lot of players didn't take him seriously. However, lucky for Umesco, and us, he would later become very important to this map's world record history. It would just take a few more years. Meanwhile, in 2015, another player named the Epic Game Hub started grinding Die Rise. He managed to rise above the rest fairly quickly, achieving a 107 in March of that year, a 110 in April, and a 115 in September. What was even
Getting better
more
and better.
interesting was that from the beginning, he used a much different trample steam placement than Space Marine. Whereas Space had placed it in the far corner of the larger room, right next to the B-23R, to lead part of the horde into it and then quickly rush away before killing stragglers, the Epic Game Hub placed it just inside the smaller room, just past where the couch debris normally was. This was because he could utilize a previously undiscovered spawn control present on this floor of the building. If you're standing in the smaller room when the zombies are spawning, they won't spawn from the above floor and drop down, or the adjacent dragon rooftop. The horde up is still by no means easy, but it's a little more consistent if you do it this way, and although you have more of
okay.
the horde spread out, you have less stragglers jumping into your way. Plus, killing full hordes is definitely faster than killing partial ones. Unfortunately, the Epic Game Hub downed on 115 to some bad horde spread, and died in Who's Who to some even worse zombie pathing, and he never reattempted the solo record after this. But his games began to make players reevaluate how they used the trample steam room. There was more than one way to do it successfully. But that wasn't all. Players had also figured out a new technique in the downtime they called unpatching the sliquifier. Now, this didn't involve literally removing the patch, but something you could do in the game to revert one of the sliquifier's changes. The fact that it left new puddles with every few zombies killed. The way
Oh, wait.
found to achieve this was by shooting a full sliquifier clip into the sign outside the sushi bar. This
Yeah, I
might
don't know why
sound
that
as
works.
ridiculous
Why
as
does it
spinning
work?
around and shooting the four corners of the mystery box to get a ray gun every time, but it
Yeah.
actually works. This is because the game only lets the slick have a maximum of 8 puddles on the ground at a time. Shooting the sign here, or other places like it, gets the puddles permanently stuck off the map. This makes it a little easier for players running Sushi Bar. Still, Die Rise hung in the air for a while, probably
Really?
due to the first few months of Black Ops
I actually saw a video of that like a few months ago, and I was like, "Oh, that's bullshit. That's not real." I guess it is real. It was coming from Wonderful in Israel. Holy shit.
3's release. But on April 10th, 2016, eager high rounder Mossy Pro Gaming, who you may remember from the following year's Zombies World Championship, came closing in on Space's long and tall standing world record. Mossy played his first 100 rounds in the elevator shaft, the new meta for the early game on Die Rise. Players would stand on the lowest ledge and slick the adjacent platform, causing all the zombies to slide past and die as long as the player always had a puddle there and a chain going. Or if they were feeling really crazy, the even faster way to run the strategy was to stay inside the slanted room and keep the incline slicked, so zombies coming from both the top and the bottom would slide to the bottom and die from the chain. This version was called Hell Room because it had no viable exit during the round. Still, with some consistency, this was by far the easiest and fastest way to get to the hard rounds, taking the average 100 time down from where it was at about 6 hours in 2013 to barely more than 3 hours. Sushi Bar was still seen as the more skillful way to play the first 100, but honestly at this point, players just wanted to get to the hard rounds as fast as possible to try to push the record. Starting at 100, Mossy went from Hell Room to the lower ledge, blocked stragglers with the trample steam, and spammed as much as he had to start a chain. He kept trading at the end of rounds, like the last few world records, to refill his ammo for the beginning of the next round, all the way up to 116. To kill the rest, Mossy actually used the same trample steam strategy as Space Marine, leaving the couch closed and killing partial hordes in front of the B-23R wall buy. But it worked out pretty well for him, as he beat Space by 1 round, making it to 118.
Hey, nice.
And he only took 2 downs in the entire game, on 108 and 118. He still managed to play faster than Space as well, by more than 5 hours. Sounds like too good of a game to end in a death, right?
Yeah.
Yep, Mossy's game froze, just like Space's had. No one could really explain why. Since Mossy and Space's times hadn't even been close, this recurring freeze seemed to be based on something with the game progression rather than hours passed. Still, a new record, even by 1 round, reinvigorated the map. Less than 2 months later, another well-known Black Ops 1 juggernaut picked up the world record. Well, the joint world record. Magic Glowbox, the player who had gotten the first 200 ever in Zombies several years before on Kino der Toten, achieved round 118 on Die Rise also, on June 3rd. He was 4 hours faster than Mossy, with his entire game being less than 10 hours. This was largely due to him using the same strategy as the Epic Game Hub, killing full hordes in the small room and utilizing the spawn control for the respawners. He was even more efficient, placing the trample steam directly on where the debris was to kill the zombies as soon as they walked into the room. However, Glowbox got a little too ambitious with his horde ups, ending his game from getting stuck on a straggler, managing to just barely revive himself in Who's Who, only to get stuck in the horde again and die. This was also one of the only Black Ops 2 records ever to be played on the Steam version of the game on PC. If you've watched my other world record histories, you know that the Steam version is horribly unoptimized, with problems like reduced backward moving speed and risk of disconnection. But Glowbox's game was so short that these didn't really matter. This joint would stand until the end of the year. But in January 2017, none other than Steve's brother, Scotty I3, would come to get the map back under the family name. Now, killing on the divider between the small room and the B-23R room had become the meta, and Scotty used this same strategy to, funny enough, match his brother's round all these years later at 122, finally catching the map up to its pre-patch record. However, he died on 122 to some slow spawners, further solidifying how Die Rise could still change and punish the player at any moment, even if they were playing well.
I'm pretty sure they have to get to a 150. They have to get to a 150.
The next world record a few months later was a very similar game by a highly skilled player named I'm Overcharged, another Zombies World Championship contender. Overcharged was exceptionally good at training and dodging zombies, and that allowed him to get out of some very tight situations. He made it to 124 before before dying in a very similar way to Scotty. Clearly, using the trample steam in the small room was much better than Space's old strategy, because no one in the new strategy had frozen or errored yet. Players were finally seeing consistent increases in the record as they watched each other's gameplay and learned bit by bit how to survive what had once been the impossible rounds. It seemed like the community elevator was finally arriving at the harsh skill floor of Die Rise, and now there was no telling how high we'd go. Still, Overcharged's record was uncontested until the next year, and this is where the dates start to get a bit murky. The next player up in the spotlight was a highly accomplished Black Ops 1 and 2 player named Tidy Barbecue, who achieved round 131. However, sadly for this historian, in recent years, Tidy has deleted all his social media accounts and basically completely scrubbed his presence from the internet. Very little gameplay remains of his games, and the exact dates are a bit unclear. What we do know is that Tidy's 131 was played sometime in 2018, probably in the later half around August or September. He played on Xbox 360, as all the previous world records had except for Glowbox, and he used the same meta strategy as Scotty and Overcharged. But his game actually ended to a disconnection from the Xbox Live servers while he was paused overnight. While most other Black Ops 2 world record attempts were played in local mode on console up to this point, on Die Rise, players needed to utilize permaperks to stay alive, the most important being the Quick Revive permaperk, for reviving yourself in Who's Who before the Horde caught up with you in the cramped room. This could only be utilized in online games. Since Die Rise games were relatively short, between 15 to 20 hours average at this point, players figured they could play them within a couple days and be fine. But Tidy's internet betrayed him even more than the map did. Still, his 131 would remain the record as Black Ops 2 moved into one of its most controversial and game-changing eras, the migration from console to an offline client of the game on PC called Redacted in the first half of 2019.
Oh, I remember this.
I won't rehash the details too much, but basically Redacted fixed the issues of the Steam version of the game on PC, and it was discovered on maps like Buried and Mob of the Dead that PC was vastly superior to play these maps on, in terms of avoiding errors. In 2019, again, we don't have the exact date, Tidy played another Die Rise game, this time on Redacted, hoping that this same optimization on other maps also applied to Die Rise. Spoiler alert, it didn't. This time, Tidy errored on 131, making this one of the only times in Zombies history where a player held a joint world record with themselves. It seemed that the small room strategy did error eventually after all. Players joked that 131 was the canonical end to Die Rise, and it would never be beaten, as the map was starting to stagnate. No one who had previously had the record seemed interested in taking it back either. Once again, the dust was settling on the map. So, who could have known that Die Rise was about to fling itself into its most insane era ever? Remember in the 2015 section when I said Umesco would become very important to the world record history? Well, the end of 2020 was his time to shine. In September of that year, Umesco had returned to playing the No Power Challenge on the map, and achieved round 123 before turning on the power and promptly dying on 124. Still, this game turned heads as it was the closest anyone had come to the record in a while, and Umesco now tended to upload more of his gameplay. Here's the thing though, No Power on Die Rise is a bit of a special one, because it doesn't really affect the map how you'd think it would. You can still get all your perks from the jumping jacks, and you don't need to pack-a-punch anything because the Sliquifier can't be pack-punched anyway. What it does affect is the elevators and maneuverability. Think about it, only perks that are turned on will have their elevators move, which in solo is only Quick Revive, which always spawns in the same place in the shopping mall. This allows you to move up and down those 3 floors, but no others. Since none of the other elevators move, there is no way to go from the sweatshop area to the rooftops and back to spawn. Well, unless you ride the freight elevator from spawn straight down to the sweatshop, and then use one of the keys to ride it back up when you're ready. This is how you build the Sliquifier in No Power and then still get back to the top. But since the freight elevator only either goes all the way up or all the way down with you on it, you can't get to an intermediate level of the building, like the shaft where the 1 to 100 camping strategy is, without trapping yourself with no way back up in No Power. For this reason, Umesco used the Sushi sushi bar strategy for his Sliquifier rounds instead of the shaft, since the sushi bar is on the top floor. A bit confusing and overly complicated, but Yumesco had mastered this style of playing Die Rise at this point. Now, he was even more hungry for the record, having come just within reach of it twice in his career now. In December 2020, Yumesco ran the No Power back again. He actually would camp until the 60s in the lower freight elevator hallway, as this area had some of the fastest spawns outside of the shaft. Then it was on to Sushi Bar, and after 100, Trample Steam and end of round Slick trades. Everything went smoothly until 113, where Yumesco experienced some major complications. When the zombies were respawning, but before he had picked up his Trample Steam, he took a down that spawned him in Who's Who across the room from his body. He grabbed the Trample Steam in Who's Who so it didn't fling him away from his body, and successfully revived himself. But when he went to continue killing the zombies, he found that the game thought that his Who's Who body, which didn't exist anymore, was still holding his Trample Steam, and it wouldn't let him pick another one up, leaving him with no way to kill the zombies.
I think it's GG.
That's
Is there anything else I can do?
This could have been 10 hours down the drain, but Yumesco fixed it by giving in, turning on the power, buying Who's Who back, and downing himself. With a fresh Who's Who body, he was able to pick up another Trample Steam and place it on the map, then revive himself and continue using it in his real body. And it was a good thing he did continue this game, because he went on to play another 10 hours and finally break the 131 curse, achieving round 134. His game ended to an error, which raised some interesting theories about what had been crashing Die Rise for years. The major difference between Tidy's games and this game was obviously that Yumesco had played about half the game with no power. This, along with some testing, pretty much confirmed a theory that had been floating around for a while about the cause of the error, something that was directly affected by the power being on. Zombies getting crushed by the elevator when they were spawning out of an elevator shaft. And Yumesco's next game, 2 weeks later, would all but prove it. At the very start of 2021, Yumesco reattempted for an even better game, and he got it, taking far less downs than in his 134 and setting a new no-power world record. However, after losing all 3 of his quick revives between 120 and 122, he decided to turn the power on 125 to be able to buy back Who's Who and not play with his life on the line. This further delay of turning the power on allowed him to make it all the way to 140 before erroring. This made Yumesco's game the longest game of Die Rise ever, at 26.5 hours. Now, the theories about no power giving a huge advantage were undeniable. Clearly, the longer you played without power, the longer the game would last without erroring. The question was, how long could a player really go without it on? With jumping jacks only coming with free perks every 4 to 5 rounds, players couldn't risk downing too often, or they'd be forced to turn the power on to buy back Who's Who for safety. Yumesco had by far the most experience with no power on the map. Would anyone be able to stand against him? Well, it did take a certain type of player and a certain motivation. See, in the summer of 2021, I hosted my own version of Zombies World Championship for the first time, an event I called Zombies Wonder Championship, with a range of challenges, one of them being Die Rise Solo High Round. This convinced a few new players to pick up Die Rise, including French high rounder Blasters, who was on a rampage through the Black Ops 2 world record scene at the time. It also helped that a new trick had been discovered that made 1 to 100 with the fastest strategy in the shaft possible on no power. In March of 2021, Sluya discovered that you could use the Trample Steam to stand on the edge of the freight elevator and then fling you off right before it dropped, when the game was supposed to trap you on it. The effect of this was that it dropped the elevator to the bottom floor, while the player remained on the top floor. So now it was possible to go to the shaft, stay there for 100 rounds, and then continue down and ride the freight elevator back up to the top to the Trample Steam room, since all the other elevators were off. This meant that Die Rise could still remain immensely fast in the early game. Now, players had figured out how to get what they called perfect drops, or manipulating the drop cycle into giving you a nuke, insta-kill, double points, and max ammo every single round. This made the average 100 time in Shaft drop to less than 3 hours, so players could practically blink and be at the hard rounds already. On June 19th, 2021, Blasters utilized this trick in the competition and continued into an amazing game of Die Rise. He managed to achieve round 156 before erroring, beating Umesko by a dizzying 16 rounds. How? Well, Blasters didn't just leave the power off and
Okay, they obliterated 150. Holy shit. Okay.
until
What's the next 200?
or 130 or even 140 when he passed the record. He never turned the power on. This meant that in terms of the error, Blaster's game was more optimized than any that had been played so far. For the entire game, only the quick revive elevator was moving. This meant that it was the only one killing respawning zombies in the shaft and contributing to the error for all 32 hours of gameplay. But Blasters wasn't the only one scaling Die Rise for Zombies Wonder Championship. He did win the first round with this game, but another world record history hero you've seen on this channel was quietly becoming a pro at the map in the background. Brazilian high rounder Issues. Still a rather unknown player in 2021, Issues spent his time doing tests and practice games, and eventually figured out that Blasters' game was more beatable than people thought, and he had a way to do it. But it wasn't until May of 2022, almost a year after Blasters 156, that Issues' training would finally pay off. Issues started out his game the same way as Blasters, using Sluya's method to play the first 100 rounds in Shaft. In fact, due to the fact that you can get multiple elevator keys and ride the freight elevator up multiple times, Issues would just use all his ammo as efficiently as possible, trade every few rounds, and go back to the shaft, whereas Blasters had left at 100 to run Sushi Bar and trade. The difference in strategies made Issues 4.5 hours faster to 116, the round the Sliquifier stopped working. Then Issues put his new tech to the test, another deceptively simple but effective trick. The whole time he was doing Trample Steam, he kept a close eye on the movement of the Quick Revive elevator, noting which direction it was going from the arrows above the doorway. When it was about to move up or down to his floor, he would simply wait to kill the zombies so they didn't get crushed by the movement. It seemed perfect. Since the zombies never died to the elevator, Issues doubted he would ever error. He rode this strategy all the way up to the 161st round, and then something very unfortunate happened. See, Issues didn't have the best PC at the time, and his processor decided to have a fit while he was playing. His game started lagging so bad that he teleported into the horde and died. And this unique ending left the map very open for the taking. I mean, very open to Blasters for the taking. Not many players were as naturally gifted as Blasters at the strategy, and with Issues' new technique of avoiding elevator kills, Blasters knew he could take the map as far as it would go. And that's exactly what he did. 2 months later, in July 2022, he played one of the most astonishing games, not only of Die Rise, but of zombies ever, beating the Die Rise record by more than it had ever been beaten in one game before, jumping the record from 161 to 201. That's right, after 9.5 years, Die Rise had its very first 200, making this the longest it's taken for any map to get a 200 ever to date. Blasters nearly tripled the length of the previous world record game, surviving 83 hours on the map, but he still finally errored on 201, meaning that Issues' strategy wasn't the cure-all he'd thought it would be. Still, what was thought a year before to be impossible was now the reigning record, and it meant potential for more unbelievable discoveries. It was a game to be remembered, although, hilariously, all the gameplay of this game was almost lost right after it was played. Blasters had just streamed it on Twitch, which deletes your past broadcasts after 2 weeks. And guess who had forgotten to highlight all the footage of the game so he could keep it? Luckily, the day was saved by a first room and no power player named Zeo, who meticulously archived tons of no power and first room world record gameplays on YouTube, in case something like this were ever to happen. He had done so with Blasters' game since it was played with no power, giving everyone in the community a renewed and heartfelt appreciation for crazy people who save hundreds of hours of other people's gameplay. Now, the record would be really hard to beat. Issues would have to come up with more optimizations than he already had. He started experimenting with tweaks to the strategy. In November 2022, he secretly played another game of Die Rise
No way, they're
off-stream.
going to beat
In this game,
201.
he played the same way as Blasters, with one difference. When the Quick Revive elevator was at its lowest position, he would place the trample steam next to the shaft and stand on top of the elevator as the zombies died, in an attempt to block the elevator spawns by standing on top of them. This worked sometimes and not others, but Issues figured he'd be able to get less elevator kills than Blasters either way. He destroyed his own personal best, but the game lost its balance on 191, 10 rounds off the record, and errored even though Issues had played 10 hours faster than Blasters. It turned out that his idea hadn't really helped at all, because when he killed the zombies outside of the sofa room, the lack of spawn control caused other zombies to be killed by the elevator either way, even if he did manage to block the spawn. He'd have to go back to the drawing board. Well, with the release of LV's Black Ops 2 Error Tracker in early 2023, players were able to take a deep dive into errors on maps like Buried, Transit, and Die Rise. These all revealed some strange things, especially on Die Rise. Another player named Astrox did more testing with this new tool, and found that other things besides elevator kills contributed to the error. Moving around the map and activating the despawn mechanic on the zombies, and using explosives, Astrox discovered that the version of the patch used to fix the broken PC port of Black Ops 2 affected the amount of memory used in the game. With all this knowledge out in the open, Issues began his final push to topple Die Rise. In August 2023, Issues became the only other person to achieve 200 on the map. All the map's optimizations had been leading up to this game. The fast first 100, the Sliquifire trading method, into the lengthy marathon of running carefully timed trains around the trample steam room, while keeping in mind the other causes of the error. There really couldn't be a more perfect game of the map than by someone who maintained constant control of the horde like Issues, and it showed. Issues boosted the record all the way to 219 before the map finally took its toll on him. At this point, a single round was taking 2 hours, and Issues decided he'd had enough, and figured he'd secured the record far beyond what anyone else, even Blasters, would reattempt for. At the beginning of 219, he ran across the map and did all 3 things you're not supposed to do at the same time. Used grenades, changed zones while zombies were respawning, and flung himself across the map, instantly erroring his game. After 103 hours of one of the most intensive strategies in zombies, Issues had quit out, but firmly planted himself above everyone else on Die Rise.
GG's.
He's like,
Bro, thank God this is finally over, bro.
Not only that, but this game was voted as 2023's Solo Game of the Year in the community poll I run for my yearly World Records montage. That should tell you everything you need to know about how respected it is. 219 remains as the record today, and it doesn't seem like it'll be beaten anytime soon. The map has come a long way from players being unable to get through a single round of trample steam without dying, or playing slow, safe strategies to stay alive. But one thing has remained consistent. The history of the Die Rise world record is a time capsule of some of the best players on the game from every era of zombies. Almost every player in this history was also famous in their time for their achievements on multiple other maps, and Die Rise became a solid piece of their accomplishments, regardless of whether they stayed in the community or disappeared and moved on from zombies as the years went by. High Round Zombies is all about mastering strategies that might seem impossible at first, making optimizations we never knew we needed, and experimenting to find workarounds to coding or hardware limitations that make the quest for higher rounds more nuanced and often more skillful. That's kind of what we love about it. In that sense, Die Rise might be Black Ops 2's biggest success story, the first map to solve its error, and the map that made the impossible possible. Speaking of which, I want to start a new analysis at the end of these videos about each map moving forward, giving a rating of how hard it is to beat, and predicting what round is possible with current knowledge. I say with current knowledge for a reason you may have picked up on throughout this video and the other world record histories. Zombies is never so cut and dry. new discoveries are always being made, even a decade later, by those
Yep.
who come along and are dedicated and skilled enough to work together to solve limitations. That's why zombies never really fizzles out, and I can make these lengthy history videos on the people who made it happen. So, what's the next 10 years looking like for Die Rise? Well, Die Rise is beatable. It's not maxed out like how Buried is now. But I'm going to give it an unbeatability rating of 4 out of 5 monkey bombs. As it stands, you'd have to play as well as Issues or Blasters does, and no one has come even close to their achievements on the map. The highest round not by either of them is a 158 by Astrox. And past that, it's still Umesco's 140 and Tidy's 131s. Die Rise is not a very widely played map in the BO2 high round community because of its difficulty and its rather passive strategy of having to use the trample steam to kill. But
Yeah, it
Issues
is a
did
very
quit
difficult
his
map.
game, and it's possible he could have made it to the early 220s, around 222, before Die Rise's predicted reset of 110 hours. I also talked to Issues himself to see if there was any other way to beat his record. He told me that jumping jack round luck could play a part, but only if you get insanely lucky. The player's choice of patch to fix the map could have an effect as well. This is probably what accounted for the difference in error progression between Blasters 201 and Issues 219. He also mentioned that we could see strategies in the future where players stay mostly inside the small room's spawn control in another attempt to prevent the error. Whether or not someone will actually do that, only time
Oh,
will
that would be
tell. It's told everything
insane.
else
Oh my
so
God,
far.
just staying in that
I'm
little
wonderful,
room?
and this has been the complete world record history of Die Rise. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for uploading. Holy shit. Wow. What a journey. Yeah, this is the last one we watched. Okay. Yeah, I already liked the video. Go like the video, guys. Go to his channel, go subscribe, link in the description at the end of this video, whatever. Just go watch this video yourself. It's amazing. I'm gonna go back and rewatch this all over again. I don't know how many times I'm gonna rewatch it, but I'm gonna rewatch it because it's so much information given to you in like 53 minutes, almost an hour long. It's so much information. As Die Rise being my favorite map, definitely gonna rewatch this. Gonna be playing Die Rise Remastered, but holy shit. 219 and the dude was like, nah, I'm done, and just crashes the game. That shit's hilarious. He just crashes the game just so he could be done. Oh my god, what a goat. Oh, that's hilarious. But can it be beaten? I mean, look at Buried. Look at Buried. He got beaten 255, I believe. That's the world record history. That's the world record in Buried, I believe. But damn. I don't know. Hopefully this video gets people motivated to go back and play it, because I know I want to play it. I don't know if I'm about getting any records, but I at least want to play it for fun. But yeah, guys, that's been it. It's been me, Haruto, reacting to Wonderful. Again, thank you very much for letting me react to this video. I've been wanting to react for it since I saw it you uploaded. I saw it uploaded. I was like, I have to watch it, but I was holding back. I was like, nope, I want to react to it. I want to react to it, and so here we are reacting to it. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been me, Haruto, and again, I can't say it enough. Go subscribe to this guy. Go subscribe. Like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Like the video as well. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya. Bye bye.